rolling through the air. The pain I felt is paid for, all is said and done. Oh, I am restricted, fixed upon the web. I need to kick the habit that my mind is breathing in. Break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless. Burning the bridge that keeps us. I'm here and I'm feeling exaggerated, that's what you assume. The story's over now, I must conclude. I am conflicted, watching where I step still, hanging in the balance. Not the life I want to live, I want to take it all. Standing tall, fear I've weighed the person you are. Oh, break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless.
And hello, everyone. We are back once again on the Blue Podcasts YouTube channel with the Golden Show, this very special show at the end of the week where we discuss all of the football which has happened the previous week and really delve deep into topics that have affected the football world over this past 7 days. And joining me today, it will be, as always, my extremely capable co-host, Josh. How are you today, Josh?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Obviously, plenty of football to talk about. So, obviously, since we didn't do a show last week for reasons of my own doing, but we've got plenty to catch up. We've got literally a total of 56 minutes before the United game, so we better get going. So, but on that note, we will obviously quickly. We'll very much start off with the Manchester United and Liverpool protests. We're not going to talk about the Premier League games that happened at the weekend because, let's be honest, I think it was kind of boring weekend of football. I don't think there was anything majorly exciting to talk about. So we'll keep it short and simple, and we'll go with the protest. Obviously, we're seeing the game postponed between Manchester United and Liverpool, which the game has now been rescheduled. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Thursday the 13th of May? If my memory,
I believe so.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's 4 games in 8 days. I believe now, thanks to this, so it's a bit of a scheduling nightmare. It's going to be extremely interesting to see what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's thoughts and comments are on that specifically, because I know when he had back in the autumn against Everton, he had a few quibbles with the fact that of when that match was played as well, and that obviously the fans, because of their actions, have now meant that it's even more of a congested fixture list. So it'll be extremely interesting to see what his thoughts will be as those fixtures pile up, and obviously it will necessitate a lot of squad rotation.
Well, what did you make of the protest? Obviously, some of you you had that majority in United fans who hurt Stuart. They kicked on a disabled door to get access to the ground. Obviously, were you happy with the protest and the protest taking place? But do you think that those small majority of United fans kind of give the media the ability to take away attention from what you're trying to do in the first place?
I think the unfortunate thing is that you'll always find that there is a minority of people in each fan base who will, work outside to cause havoc and mayhem, which isn't necessarily, they don't necessarily hold the same agenda or the same values as the majority of the fan base did, who organised the protest. The unfortunate thing is the media would. I mean, even if it had been only a single person, let's say, that had been causing lots of drama, the media would somehow have twisted. I feel that somehow have twisted the story so that person was, the standard bearer of what the protest had been about. That's how the media tends to work. It tends to sensationalize, and it tends to, really fix on or try and stir up drama. And that tends to be how the media works, especially in Britain. I couldn't really speak for elsewhere around the world, but definitely the British media, in my experience, that is definitely their modus operandum. In terms of how the protest went, I felt in the majority it did very well. It was quite outstanding and astounding, really, that it got the match itself postponed. There was a feeling that it would just get delayed, and then eventually, slightly later in the evening, that it would get played. But it really did send, I feel, like a strong message to the owners that something does need to change. And obviously, the fact that it was Manchester United versus Liverpool, the two biggest clubs in English football, that match is probably the biggest in the football calendar. It really does send shockwaves and ripples around the world. But obviously, the actual sort of aftermath of it. One of the Glazers was cornered by Sky Sports like later on into this week when he tried to get away in his car. And didn't deign to answer any questions about whether he was going to sell or not. And drove off very quickly. So we've basically got to watch this space. I know there's potentially another protest that will be organised later on. When that rearranged fixture's played potentially. So yeah, it's going to be extremely interesting. But we all know that the Glazers have been extremely avaricious and greedy, and it's for me, looking in a realistic and pragmatic way, I feel like it's going to be unlikely that they will sell unless severe pressure of the like of which the protest is applied.
Just on that point, obviously, I'm assuming you're very much aware and seen that Ivan Glazer was obviously questioned by American journalists, which obviously very publicly came into the British media. After everything that's happened with the Super League, after everything that's happened with with Manchester United, the protest, do you think it's disgraceful that when he's given the opportunity by the media to speak to Manchester United fans, even to say something so blatant, probably meaningless, but at least say something, but he completely ignores him? Do you think that that is just the most disrespectful thing you can do to Manchester United fans? 2, it only fuels the anger, and 3, it proves that Jules Glazer's apology was nothing more than a PR, and he probably had nothing to do with it.
I mean, to be honest, it's in many ways, though, what I would say is that when you're sort of confronted like that, it is difficult for him to know what to say, because a lot of it has to be sort of prepared or thought through. And I think even if he had said sorry or anything along those lines, even that could have been misconstrued. So it's not necessarily that he did the incorrect thing by remaining silent, because I feel like United, a lot of United fans anyway, have wanted the Glazers gone for many years. So it's not as if no matter how profuse his apology or sincere he believed that the apology would be, it's not as if I feel like it wouldn't have dampened the flames of the dislike and bad feeling towards the Glazers. So it wasn't necessarily that. It's just the fact that it appears that there will be no movement from them, because ultimately, we have had from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, there has been a statement where he's sort of said that the Glazers have personally apologised to him for what had happened, and obviously he was sort of transmitting the message as well. But ultimately, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, whilst being a club legend, he still does have a job, and when you're obviously in a job, you can't really speak bad about your superiors, especially not to the media. So, Ollie's kind of got his hands tied a bit in that regard. But like I said, the road back for the Glazers. I don't think there is a road back. They're just hoping to sort of weather the storm, and ultimately that sort of stoicism and that reluctance or decline of speaking to the media, in which you've sort of referenced, that was deliberate. And like I said, it feels like they're trying to sort of slink into their corner and camouflage themselves and try and hold on to this, to ultimately their cash cow.
Here's a very good question, all right? And as a Manchester United fan, I'm sure you follow all these accounts, you keep up to date more than I would do as a Chelsea fan. Are these protests and these projects? I know there's another Sky Sports reporter that United fans are going to hit the sponsors. I know Adidas is a bit unhappy with the way things are at the moment. I know there was a certain company that it's got down to a 1-star review. Is this European Super League made these protests? And these protests are going to keep going and keep going and keep going until the Glazers give in, or is this just like a bit of a backlash and then it probably will eventually die out back to where it was?
Very difficult to say, isn't it? I would say the only way that they'll sort of get them to dampen down would be to spend quite big in the summer. And what I mean by that is that when they if they were to put money there, then you would have some fans who would believe that they had changed their ways in some way. And obviously, it's very difficult. A lot of the time, it feels like the team's fortunes very much depend on where the sort of how ill-feeling it would be. So it's the fact is Manchester United have struggled over the last few years, and it was obviously partially to do with that there is this sort of bad feeling. But ultimately, this was the sort of final straw that broke the camel's back, and we still will see protests. It's just whether they're still going to be as vehement or as loud as they are currently. But we will just have to watch this space. Really, I would say that there will still be quite loud ones, but it's how long people will continue to do it, because you'll always have people who are quite stubborn and who will continue to do it, constantly, and will still do it for, let's say, years and years until eventually the Glazers hopefully do go. But you will also have I would say, a lot of people who will see that there is no result to this and then sort of give up. So I think you'll have two parties, and it's just who's going to be the louder voice, really, and how many people can stick through it. And we've also got to be conscious rather, that the United fans have to remain within the constraints of the law. And what I mean by that is there's only a certain amount of areas or a certain amount of avenues you can try to get the Glazers out. And if those are exhausted, and let's say the Glazers aren't moving, a bit like they are currently now, from all I can tell, obviously we've spoken about the Sky Sports confrontation, that the Glazers are trying to double down and to keep on and hold on like the blood-sucking leeches that they are, then I think that when those opportunities, those options are exhausted again, then they'll have no choice but to give up. But it's how much we can persevere and try and get rid of them. And obviously, the sponsors, just the final thing. Sorry, the sponsors obviously hitting the sponsors is the main thing, because ultimately, the Glazers are only in it for the money.
Here's a very good question for you. Right, this is the last point about Manchester. This is a hypothetical question. If the 50+1 rule was introduced, all right, and the players had the power in terms of the manager, would you sack Ole Gunnar Solskjaer?
I think if it's very. I don't, to be honest, I don't know what the overall fans' opinion is on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I think it's very much split. It'd be interesting to do a poll, but I think there's a lot of fans who sway in sort of like whatever the result is. If it's a win, if it's a win off the back of a win, it's all Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is the man. Or if it's a loss, it's he needs to get rid of him. Personally, I would get rid of him, which and I've got lots of different reasons why I would, but I think probably the fans would want to stick with him. I think overall it'd still be trying to stick with him, because a lot of them feel like second is progress in terms of the league position, and I think a lot will also depend obviously on the Europa League, which is we're obviously in the final, barring a miracle, a Roma miracle. We're in the final, and it's whether we win that as well, because obviously the question marks are on whether he can achieve silverware and in the biggest moments with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But I think at the moment Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's stock is still high enough that most people would want, if it was an overall fan vote, I think most people would keep him. But from a personal perspective, I'd get rid of him.
Well, I see. We don't get stated in the comments for that, but I guess that's part of Priscilla speaking on the podcast. Moving on from Manchester United onto our second topic. Jose Mourinho as the new AS Roma manager, which literally this came out of the blue. Like, this literally was the most unbelievable news. I think it's 15 days or something like that since he's been sacked from Tottenham Hotspur. He gets announced. Paulo Velasquez, the current Roma manager, is leaving at the end of the season after a disappointing campaign. Obviously, Chris Smalling and Mkhitaryan won't be too happy that Mr. Mourinho is walking through back the door. This is obviously a decline, I think, for him, because he was meant to go into Spurs and make them title challenging team. Obviously, they're well outside the top four. He's going to a Roma team that is extremely old, needs to rebuild. Yeah, Roma don't really have the funds, so. Do you think this is just Mourinho taking any job that he can get now, or do you actually think that maybe going back to Italy in a less pressured environment may be a bit easier for him?
I think it will help him. I think the Italian league really suits quite pragmatic defensive managers, which Mourinho is, and I also think that there's not, as we've seen obviously with Inter now winning Serie A, we've seen that Juventus aren't necessarily the powerhouse of old either. And I think the standard in Italian football is not as good as it once was. So I think if a team is well drilled, which Mourinho definitely will drill teams very well, and tactically astute, then I feel like he could do some good things with Roma. It's just the only problem is that Mourinho does need the funds, because that's what he need. In many ways, obviously with Spurs as well, it was a bit of a struggle because Mourinho will normally be sort of competing with one of the top sort of teams that will be able to afford certain players and certain acquisitions that he wants. So if he doesn't have that with Roma, it will still be a struggle for him. But at the same time, it is, as you've spoken about, is slightly less pressure cooker, because ultimately it's Italy, and there won't be the same expectations for Roma as there would be for Spurs, I don't believe, anyway. Even though I must be careful because Roma fans would sort of disagree with that. But I think it's not the big challenge that he had at Spurs when the media's out for his blood and where he had to win a trophy, because that was what he was brought in for. Roma will require more of a rebuild, but he'll be allowed more time, I think, to try and progress with Roma. And obviously Mkhitaryan he actually quite liked, and Smalling he did use quite a bit as well. But he did speak about Smalling as not being the best on the ball, which I totally concur with as well. And obviously the other thing is that potentially Mourinho might be bringing either Mata or Matic or both, because obviously he liked both of those players. He might be bringing them to Roma as well, so that'll get rid of some of our players, some of our sort of deadwood, so to speak. But I don't. Yeah, I feel like he will do well, but at the same time, he'll need money. And if he doesn't have money, then I'd say probably again sort of top four might be his ceiling again with Roma if there is no money, because Inter Milan and Juventus and Milan, for example, they do have slightly more money, and so but if anyone can have a renaissance, then Mourinho can. So I wish him well in here with Roma.
All right, if you look at that Roma team, though, their front four here against Manchester United is Pedro, who was obviously he's fairly free. He was with us. Pellegrini, he is a young, promising midfielder. Fair enough. Mkhitaryan and Dzeko. It's old, it's slow. Like that Roma team needs a good kick up the backside. It makes you think: is Mourinho that type? He likes to buy old veteran players. So I don't know if that's Roma. I don't know if that's maybe Roma trying to suggest that maybe they can't afford to buy younger players, so they need someone who could take care of the older players. It's going to be a very, very interesting situation. Do you think this is maybe Jose's last proper chance at a big European club? Do you think if he gets sacked again here, that maybe that'll be him and maybe looking into the international thing?
I don't think so. I think big European clubs will always want Jose Mourinho. I think he's one of those, real elite managers. I think even if Jose Mourinho never won a trophy again, he'd still go down as one of the greatest managers of all time. So when you've got someone with that pedigree and that trophy-winning experience, I mean, even at Manchester United, where he didn't necessarily succeed, he still won trophies. I think Spurs is obviously the only team that he hasn't won a trophy with, and that was, in my view anyway, primarily because they sacked him a few days before the League Cup final. where he could have, a Mourinho masterclass, could have won Spurs a League Cup, which was a disastrous decision. But Mourinho does more often than not, apart from, like I said, this final thing, to guarantee a trophy. And I feel like any sort of major team would still want Mourinho. But maybe not the real elite clubs, though. So maybe not the absolute top clubs would want him. Maybe the sort of second tier or third tier would still want him. But he will always, I think, and until he retires himself, he will always have a job at relatively big clubs, just because of his name, his status, and ultimately, as you know, as a Chelsea fan, all that he's achieved within the game, because he is one of the greatest managers of all time, and no one can doubt that. And so with regards to Mourinho, I think that I think it will be. It would be very interesting to see whether he potentially could go to as a national team coach or national team manager. But I think he'll just have to wait for that, and maybe Portugal might be the avenue that he could explore. But I think he's still got a prolonged career with club for now. And so it will be absolutely fascinating. I mean, if we think about Mourinho's career as well, obviously with Inter Milan, he won the treble. So he does have a good relationship with Italian football, and if he is going to try and win silverware, he knows the Italian league inside and outside. And
Mention decided to turn into a Matteo. Oh, sorry about that. Jesus.
That's fine. I was just basically speaking about Inter Milan, where I feel like he had his greatest success with that treble in 2010. So I feel like he's got the that's where his strength might lie. So. Yeah, so just very quickly, obviously, while Josh sort of sorts out his Wi-Fi issues, the other thing that's happening, because we always record on a Thursday, and the other thing which Josh has sort of mentioned is that Roma and United, obviously, are playing, and as you guys will know if you've seen this previously, I'm a Manchester United fan, and yeah, it's gonna. I think it's a relatively straightforward match for Manchester United. I am quite concerned as well regarding the fact that he hasn't necessarily utilised more of his squad at this juncture. But I do feel like United are going to be able to go through, and it's going to be extremely interesting. Again, you guys will be sort of seeing this on Friday. It's going to be extremely interesting to see whether United can go through. But like I said, he's really rotated quite considerably. So yes, very interesting. But I'm predicting United will go through with a fair degree of certainty.
I think I've mentioned I got high. Obviously, been talking too much stuff about people I should be talking to. I mentioned I just decided to just give up for like a few minutes. I don't know what happened there, but anyway, I say I'm back. So, well, I don't know what George has been talking about, but thank you, George, for managed to deal with my certain internet. I don't know.
No, so we talked. I sort of finalised my thoughts on Mourinho, which was basically to say that potentially he won't be available for elite clubs. I don't think elite clubs, the real top clubs, will want him any longer. But I think that sort of second tier, a bit like what you might classify Roma. I think those second tier of teams will want him. obviously Italian football really does suit him, I think, and he did have his biggest success in Italian football with Inter Milan, in my view, in terms of trophy haul and an amazing achievement in 2010. And I was just saying that I feel like United will go through, and just talking briefly about the fact that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer hadn't rotated. So that was
very quick preview, very quick prediction for Arsenal Villarreal.
I think
we're on
Villarreal,
that Europa League topic.
I think Villarreal will go through. I think it will be a draw, like 2-2 or something, 1-1, 2-2. Obviously on the night, and which will mean Villarreal will go through because obviously they've got the first leg advantage.
Okay, fair enough. So we're going to move on to the Champions League. Obviously now we'll start off with Manchester City and PSG. I think Manchester City. Obviously, we didn't speak about the first leg because we didn't record last week. So I think very quickly on the first leg. First half was all Manchester City. There was all PSG. So that first half and that first leg was all PSG. I think they dominated. But I think the second, the third, and the fourth half, obviously the second leg in the first half, and then the first and second half in the second leg, Manchester City deservedly went through, and I think Pochettino got absolutely outdone. And obviously, no Mbappe for PSG in that second leg was a real killer.
I think Mauro Icardi, who, to be fair, a couple of years or so ago, I was quite a big fan of because he was at that time a very clinical striker in terms of shots per goal, or goals per shot, I should say. But he was non-existent, basically a ghost up front, offered very little. And ultimately, Neymar, although he sort of promised bits and pieces, City were extremely solid. Ruben Diaz and John Stones were very wall-like, very solid again, and they just couldn't find a way through. And ultimately, Riyad Mahrez with 2 fine finishes. The second one obviously was a really good passing maneuver by City, and ultimately a good sort of pass through by Phil Foden, a good cross across, and then Mahrez is sort of there to sweep at home. So yeah, City deservedly through. I think they were the better team. PSG were hampered slightly by Mbappe's injury. But ultimately, the other sort of factor which you've got to speak about is the lack of discipline and mentality in PSG, which has been a running theme throughout the last few years. Obviously, with the 6-1 against Barcelona a few years ago, the 3-1 that Manchester United inflicted upon them in the Champions League as well. Just recent examples, and obviously, again, losing their heads. Obviously, in the first leg that you've talked about, Gay with the obviously terrible tackle, got himself sent off, Idrissa Gana Gay, and again, Angel Di Maria against Fernandinho was just ridiculous. I mean, I just can't. It just absolutely no sense. And again, it wasn't just them. It was obviously Verratti as well, was trying to get himself sent off as well, just kicking out at people. It was quite poor to see, really, the lack of discipline and sportsmanship. And that's certainly not values that I don't think Pochettino. That's not things that Pochettino values. It's just the mentality of the team, which are very poor losers. And when the going gets tough, ultimately PSG always flake and melt, and Manchester City were deservedly through. So yeah, deservedly through to the final.
And I know you're very adamant that obviously if Bayern Munich didn't have to play Choupo-Moting from PSG, wouldn't have even been in that semi-final.
100%, yeah. There's zero doubt in my mind. And I think a lot, it's quite widely accepted from a lot of other people as well, that if Robert Lewandowski had been fit, then I think it'd be you guys would be playing Bayern in the final. Obviously, Chelsea, we'll get onto that in a minute, but Chelsea would be playing Bayern in the final because Bayern Munich. I could see that Manchester City were going to sort of beat PSG if they were clinical enough, which they were. But Bayern Munich are on a totally different level, even from City. It's just the fact that they couldn't finish to save their life, and obviously Choupo-Moting is very poor. So yeah, I think it would have been. But I think Bayern would have got rid of City. But ultimately, you have injuries, you've got to sort of deal with them. And although Bayern were unlucky, City have capitalised, and they're now looking to, where they're obviously 90 minutes away or slightly more maybe from winning their first European Cup.
No, let's hope not, because obviously the team I absolutely adore, Chelsea Football Club, are back in the Champions League final for the third time. Obviously, both times that we've gone to the Champions League finals, we had a penalty shootout. Obviously, we beat Bayern Munich in our own backyard, and then we lost to Manchester United with a John Terry slip. if this game goes to penalties, I don't think I'll be able to go for the third Champions League final in a row. I literally think I would collapse and melt. But we'll have a very quick recap of Chelsea's Champions League run. So obviously during the group stages was all Frank Lampard. They finished top of the group with Sevilla, Canaspor, and Rennes. I think there was no surprise that Chelsea got through that group. I think
that's the key.
Very much expected, even under Lampard.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, isn't it? You have to. Chelsea have been. I mean, also we'll get onto Chelsea, and there's another topic that we're hopefully going to have time to discuss as well. But I think ultimately, in any cup competition, you want to play worse teams. You want to play absolute trash because it helps you to get through those rounds. And obviously, just off Chelsea for a split second, Manchester City, when they won their sort of English treble of the sort of League Cup, FA Cup, and the Premier League a few years ago. I mean, they were playing basically the dog and duck every match in the FA Cup and the League Cup that year. So it does help a lot when you have the luck of the draw. And obviously Chelsea, not only with the group that they had, which you've just sort of described, I mean, with the best will in the world, none of those teams are too good. And having that, but also having Porto obviously in the quarterfinal, which was a sort of like real club that everyone wanted, all the other 7 teams wanted. You do want the luck of the draw, but you can only play what's in front of you. And Chelsea, I mean, ultimately, going on to that sort of semi-final, were deserved winners because Real Madrid were a shadow of their former glories, with obviously with Ronaldo in the attack.
So obviously we then played Madrid. We obviously played Atletico Madrid in the round of 16. Obviously this was a bit of a tough game, but I think that big Giroud overhead kick for the away goal was really, really big. And I think the second leg was a bit nervy, but I think Chelsea were probably better than what everyone thought we were going to be.
I mean, I think Chelsea. I think both of the two. It's good, obviously, that the fact that in the Champions League, it used to be that you would have, I think with Bayern, for example, last year, I think they were obviously quite solid defensively, but at the same time, it was basically they would always score more than you with Bayern Munich. Whereas this year, it's like with both, as I think you might agree, the success of Manchester City and Chelsea at the moment in the Champions League has been on their defences. I don't think anyone could disagree with that. The defences for both of those teams have been exemplary. And I think, again, obviously against Atletico Madrid, when you were speaking about it, and against Real Madrid as well, and all the other teams, is the fact that how good those defences are. I mean, Mendy, for example, I think he's got a very good save percentage, but at the same time, I think he faces the lowest amount of shots of any goalkeeper in the top 5 European leagues, because that's how well drilled Chelsea's defence is. And so he did make a couple of good saves against Benzema, but at the same time, those were the only sort of opportunities because Chelsea's defence is so solid. It's not necessarily that any individual is superb or world class with Chelsea. It's just the fact that Thomas Tuchel has got them so well drilled that literally it's almost everyone closes down the spaces. And obviously when you've got a central defensive midfielder as good as N'Golo Kante, who can cover all the additional bits when players do move around, he's always there. It makes for a recipe for success. And again, I think Chelsea, the bedrock of their success in the Champions League and obviously the league now as well under Tuchel has been their defence, which has been fabulous, and the same with Manchester City, as we spoke about with the other games. So yeah, Chelsea's defence has been superb in this run.
As I said, on to that, we'll not worry too much about Porto, because I think Porto was quite a straightforward game. I don't think there's any too much questions to say about Porto. I think Porto was a very simple 4 game for us. Real Madrid, obviously the first leg ended 1-1 in Madrid. Well, it wasn't in Madrid, but you know what I mean. It went in Spain, where I think Chelsea, up until the goal, dominated. I think Chelsea took his goal very well, and Real Madrid maybe should have probably won that game on the night. But last night at Stamford Bridge, I think, yes, Madrid had the possession, but that front three of Benzema, Hazard, and Junior never caused Chelsea any sort of problems. Benzema, 2 good chances were too good saves from Andy. Other than that, I think Chelsea probably could have won the game by more, especially in that second half.
I mean, obviously, our thoughts on the Chelsea front, on the Chelsea forwards, and certain members. I mean, the only one that I really do rate a lot is Pulisic, who of course was heavily involved in that second decisive goal. because the rest of them, I mean, Timo Werner, we've spoken about. I don't know if I have spoken about on this show before or another channel, but Timo Werner. I mean, if any chance is harder to, he's just terrible in front of goal at the moment. And again, obviously, he got his goal as we know, that first goal, which was quite crucial. But I think anyone could have scored that because he was literally like an open goal, and I was half expecting, as he sort of rolled back his head, I was half expecting him to head it wide or head it over, because that's how bad a form he's been in. But that was just almost unmissable even for Timo Werner, and we saw even in that slight part of that first half, obviously when he was offside, when he sort of prodded at home as well. When it's not going for you, it really isn't. And I know people have praised Tuchel for sticking with Werner, but I think in the future, unless Werner does turn it around and has a miraculous remontada, as the Spanish would say, which is comeback, unless he does have one, that's a player, because you're still going to need a centre forward, which he was going to be hopefully the answer to the problems. And it really was a case of where, as you said, they could have had 4 or 5, but at the same time, that's what Chelsea have struggled with, is the fact that up top they're very lackluster. Just as a neutral sort of fan, defensively superb, but up top very lackluster. No real. I mean, obviously Timo Werner, I think, is your top goal scorer in all competitions and top assister, I think. And that says everything because that says everything because he's not. I mean, as we've sort of spoken about, I could, even having watched Chelsea for quite a few games actually this season, but when you're sort of watching them, he is not. He does have potential, and obviously, his pace is incredible, and some of his movement. But in front of goal, he's been absolutely terrible, and he's still the top goal scorer, top assister. So up top, you'd expect Tuchel to want to make changes. But in terms of the overall game, I think obviously if we're looking at both legs, in summary, I mean, N'Golo Kante is just an absolute phenomenon. I mean, I've always been a massive fan of his. I wanted him back when Leicester let go of him in 2016. Unfortunately, Chelsea got him and won the league the season after. So he's just an absolutely ridiculous player. I think he is absolutely crucial to the way that Chelsea play. He's probably your most important and influential player because, having him on the field, I think Tuchel said he was like the 12th man or something, didn't he? Having 12 players, and that's how good N'Golo Kante is. And I mean, Real Madrid didn't really lay a glove on you in that match because all the players wanted to feed. Not a single one wants to run with the ball. And I thought that Vinicius Jr. was really probably the worst culprit because, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of Ben Chilwell by any means. I think especially for the price that you paid for him from Leicester, and I feel like if he'd actually tried to, the one time he did go at him, he went past him quite easily and obviously got him the cross, but he didn't go at him often enough at all. He just seemed more concerned with sort of kicking Ben Chilwell rather than actually trying to beat him, and which I think he could have done. But it was just very, very, very poor from Real Madrid, and it feels like they're a team. Because all teams will have this, won't they? They could have a period of success, but eventually those same players will get old, it will get tired, and they just can't do it anymore. And Chelsea outran Real Madrid, and it was an extremely dominant performance. And though it pains me to say it, Chelsea were worthy winners overall over both legs, and deservedly in the final, with facing Manchester City in an all English final.
And Chelsea are going to win the final. Yeah,
I think they will. But it will be interesting because I think it'll be a bit like the FA Cup. It could be because a bit like the FA Cup, you've got two defences, probably the two best defences in Europe, against one another, the two best defensive systems, and it's just who can sort of and that's where Chelsea will really have to obviously definitely play Pulisic because he is your main sort of potent person who actually will score when he gets the opportunity, and. I think it will be one goal in it either way. It'll probably like another 1-0 because the chances will be at a premium. And it's just whether Chelsea can take them. But you would say on paper Manchester City will win. But Thomas Tuchel has already proven against Pep Guardiola very, very recently when you and I did a watch along on your channel.
And Manchester City play us this weekend at the Etihad as well. So
Well, no,
pretty,
you'd rather lose this one, wouldn't you? The one at the weekend,
yeah,
than
yeah.
the one in.
Absolutely, but it will show because if City go out there and play, they're a more stronger team, but like they play with a false nine, maybe play with two more attacking midfielders on like the FA Cup. It'll be interesting to see how we cope with it, especially knowing these two teams will play each other in the Champions League. But,
just the final thing, the only issue for you is so a bit like when I'm saying that you have to play Pulisic because he's your best attacking player in my view anyway. Consistently. The only issue is if Manchester City don't play Raheem Sterling, because I feel like if they play Raheem Sterling, I feel like he makes them weaker. I think Manchester City are much stronger when they have obviously De Bruyne in the false nine, but also either side of him you've got Foden and Mahrez, and so the team that they played against PSG, if they use that same team, I feel like you will struggle. Because I think a lot of the time against Chelsea in that FA Cup final, FA Cup semi-final, I should say, a lot of the time because Raheem Sterling is flatter to deceive. I feel like that was quite good for Chelsea, but with Mahrez and Foden and other players like that, I don't think they will. But I do trust every time I've seen Chelsea, they've always somehow managed to cling on and get a clean sheet. So yeah, to be honest with you, it could go either way. It really is a 50-50 clash, and it's going to be fascinating to watch. And it's just a shame from a Manchester United perspective that both teams can't lose.
Just on a small note, Chelsea have an FA Cup final in the top four race before that Champions League game, so it could be, the season can take a very big sort of storage. With about 19 minutes left, me and George did agree in this, but we're going to do a combined Chelsea and United 11 because apparently there was some controversy about a Manchester United, a Chelsea guy said that no United players would get into the starting lineup and whatever. So me and George are going to battle it out to see who. We're going to go with the 4-2-3-1. Since I think
that is fine. Yes, yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. Seems like that seems to be the best formation. So obviously, we have four different options to go. We have Kepa or Lisa Balaga, Edward Mendy, David De Gea, or Dean Henderson. I'm going to be biased. I am going to go for Mendy because he's been I think flawless since he signed for us, and I'm going to guess you're going with Henderson.
I am, yeah. What I would say about Mendy, and that's why I sort of brought it in, I sort of held back slightly on the thing, but obviously earlier when we were speaking, is that I don't think, obviously Mendy as a distributor is probably the second best in the league, behind Edison of Manchester City. But I feel like goalkeeping wise, I don't necessarily rate him as highly as Dean Henderson. I feel like obviously Dean Henderson's got all the save percentage, all the saves, and he was exemplary obviously for Sheffield United, but also for us, he's been phenomenal. And goalkeeping is always the primary thing about goalkeepers is they are to be saving. That is there, even if they are good at passing and so forth, is the primary things to save. And I think Mendy is not as good as you would think as Chelsea fans. I feel like he just doesn't have, as we spoke about, all the statistics back it up as well. He faces the least amount of shots of any, because of how well drilled Chelsea are. Their entire system depends on him not facing any shots. Was he not in goal for the 5-2 as well against West Brom?
Yeah, but David De Gea was in goal for the 6-1.
Yeah, but I'm not. I was Henderson, wasn't I?
I know, but I'm just saying it happens to the best of the goalkeepers, you see.
No, but that was more to do with...
Ederson was on the back at the end of a 5-0 loss to Leicester. It happens in football. Alisson was the end of a 7-0, 7-2 loss to Aston Villa. All the top goalkeepers suffer from it. But I just think Mendy's came in. He's not made. I don't think he's made one mistake. I think he's really good with his feet. His position's great. He's always made the clutch saves. He hasn't done any Kepa-like mistakes where he's just let simple things go in. But what I will do is we'll leave it to the chat to decide anything that we can't decide on. And I will post it on my Twitter, and then my community can get involved, and then we'll let the fans talk because we'll be here forever trying to come to an agreement. Though I would say there's no argument. I think Luke Shaw goes left back. I don't think I have any. I don't have any complaints about that. I'm not going to put Marcus Alonso or Joel in there. Yeah. The two centre backs, I'm going to go. So this is difficult because all our centre backs have been really, really good. And I don't know. I don't know if you're going to put Maguire, Lindelof in there. I don't know if you. I'd probably put Bailly in there. You probably have. My two centre backs are two Chelsea centre backs, and I'm going with Rudiger and Thiago Silva.
I have agreed that you can have Rudiger, but I'm going to have Eric Bailly as my other centre back.
I mean, the guy's barely played. Come on,
his record. So his record this season has been out of. He's played, I think, 12 times, and we've had eight clean sheets out of 12. So his record does actually stack up, and I feel like actually Eric Bailly is probably, of all these, obviously Thiago Silva when he was younger would be clearly the best defender of all of them, but I feel like Eric Bailly is better than at this current point. This exact point, I feel like he's the best centre back of all of them.
Okay, well, we'll another agree to disagree. Right back, I'm going. See, this is difficult.
No, I mean, this is just easy for me, and I'm going to prove why in a minute. But you carry on with your right back.
It's difficult. It is. It's really, really difficult to say because I want to say Reece James. I really, really want to say Reece James, but I think I have to give it to Wan-Bissaka. Reece James hasn't played probably consistently enough to probably earn that spot. And I still think in general it does seem like, I think after maybe a dodgy start to the season, I think Wan-Bissaka in general has had a better season. Also given the fact that this guy literally plays every single minute of football, whom really known to man. But I do think Wan-Bissaka probably edges it over Reece James, unfortunately.
I actually think it's not actually that close. I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka is a lot, and obviously, England, obviously with Gareth Southgate, he's a bit of a. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to sort of say anything about him, but he's not. He doesn't necessarily make the best decisions, let's say, in terms of who he's selecting. And I feel like, Wan-Bissaka. I mean, in actual fact, in terms of like assists and goals, so direct goal contributions, Wan-Bissaka's got one more than Reece James in all competitions. So actually, Reece James, all the sort of talk about how Aaron Wan-Bissaka's main sort of, lacking is attacking, style. He's actually got probably, I don't even know. I think Trent's not actually done that well either this year. So Aaron Wan-Bissaka stacks up against all of them, and obviously defensively, there's not a better fullback in the league defensively. It's not even close.
Okay,
he's got to be right back.
The two CDMs, I've gone with Kante, which I'm assuming you have Kante in there. I know you're a big Kante lover, so Kante definitely, especially after last night, if Kante's in there for me. Beside Kante, I thought Pogba.
Yeah. He's been Pogba whenever he's played this season, and it would start like hours and hours of debate about, because I actually feel like, because I'm a massive Paul Pogba fan anyway, I feel like he hasn't been inconsistent for us. And like I said, he'll open a can of worms, and it'll take me hours to explain why. But I feel he hasn't been inconsistent for us when he's been here. But this season, if we're just looking at this season, he's absolutely phenomenal. Probably been in my opinion, again, a massive Pogba fan. He's probably been our best player when he's played. It's just been unfortunate that when he's got injured, when our results have downturned. But Paul Pogba's probably, in both teams, he's probably the most talented player of any of them. He can hit a pass either foot, can score goals, can tackle, can dominate a game. He's just a phenomenal player. So, I mean, to be honest, I don't really need to go into too much detail because you picked him anyway. So, Pogba and Kante, and obviously those two in there is what France have to win World Cups and things. So, it'll be a good partnership.
The number 10 has to go to Bruno. I don't think I could sit here and say Mason Mount or Kai Havertz. Unfortunately, I have to swallow my pride and say Bruno Fernandes. No, I am on the left-hand side of the middle three. I'm going Christian Pulisic. You're going to say Rashford.
Yeah. I feel like
Rashford's on the right for me, you see. So I've got.
So you can have, to be honest with you, that's fine. We can have both of them, because I've gone it the other way round. So I've gone with Pulisic on the right and Rashford on the left, only because Rashford obviously plays better on the left, and that's where obviously he does struggle on the right. And I feel like obviously of all the wing options that we've got in terms of goals and assists, Rashford's levels and streets ahead of the rest of them. So it's no real competition. So Rashford and Pulisic is fine. I think there is an argument for Mason Greenwood as well, because I feel like he, in the last few weeks or so, has been.
I think he's really the first teenager. I think he's the first teenager to reach 100 starts for his, or 100 first team appearances for his club tonight. If I remember right.
Yeah, it's just that he hasn't been good enough for this season for long enough. But actually, if we're only looking at the last few weeks, he's been probably the best wide player because he scored so many. Obviously, against, as you remember, when United played Spurs, he was the assist for Cavani and obviously the goal as well, and obviously important goals against other clubs as well. So he's really come alive in the last few weeks. But if you're looking all over on the season, and as you know, I'm a big fan of Pulisic anyway, so I'm happy with Pulisic and Rashford either wing, whichever way you want to do it. But I think Pulisic right wing and Rashford left wing only because Rashford is far superior on the left wing. So and Pulisic obviously is good on both wings. So I'm happy with that.
And then striker, Timo Werner. No, I'm joking. Edison Cavani.
100%. Yeah, it's not.
I actually don't think there is anyone else. Like, it's not going to be Martial, is it? Like, I don't know how you feel about Martial. I don't know how you feel about Martial as a person. It's not Tammy Abraham, unfortunately, because he didn't really play as much on Tuchel. Drew in and out. Werner, unfortunately, he's missed too many good chances to be in there. So I think Cavani's actually in there by default, unless you're going to play Greenwood up there.
I would, but at the same time, I think Cavani. I think Greenwood plays slightly better off the right anyway, so that's why you could like an argument with Pulisic potentially, but not over the entire season. But Cavani, I think. I mean, you'll know as well whenever you've seen him, he is just phenomenal. I mean, the only sadness is he's quite old, but but that hasn't sort of detracted from his class, and he's scored plenty of goals. It's not just his goals either. He's just sort of an all-round forward. It's just a pleasure watching him. He's just world class. Movement, link-up play, just everything about Cavani. I thought I knew Cavani was a good player before I watched him for United, but now watching him, you see why. I think he's the third, isn't he? I think he's scored the third most amount of goals in Europe over like the last 12 or 15 years, and obviously the other two that are ahead of him are Messi and Ronaldo. So so you're going against aliens there, but he's the one that's just below them. And when you watch him for us, you can see why. He's just his movement is exceptional. Probably the second best, I'd say, of anyone I've ever seen. The only better one I'd say is Cristiano Ronaldo. That movement in and around the box. And it's not just his movement, it's layoff play. And when United have Cavani up front, we are just a totally different team. So, yeah, Cavani definitely for me up front. And manager, I've gone Thomas Tuchel.
About what you were saying about no one gets. Yeah, no, I kind of. I didn't think you were going to pick Solskjaer because I know you were saying that. I wonder what a manager like Tuchel could do with a squad like ours or something like that. So that was a particularly surprise to me. So to end this podcast, so you got to go and watch the United game. So I want to make sure you get enough time to get yourself set up for it. Very quickly about the Euros. For the Euros, very very quickly, we're all going to do a very very quick run through groups. And we're going to do a very quick run through for the groups, and then you're just going to give me your very quick predictions. We'll go into more detail. We'll go into more detail as we go on. But I feel like this will just be a bit of a laugh, all right? So
yeah,
I don't know how much you know about all of these international teams, but anyway, we will. I said we'll very very quickly get into it. So we're going to start off with Group A: Italy, Switzerland, Turkey, and Wales.
Italy, but the only problem is with this is that I think, I mean, to be honest with you, you'll probably know better than I will. There's some sort of weird qualifying, isn't there, for this, where like if you're the best, I think 4 of the best thirds go through and stuff like that. So it's because there's 24 teams, isn't there? Some sort of weird thing about that. But in terms of that, I'd say Italy first, and then I'd say Turkey. Then what was it? Wales and Switzerland, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say Italy, Turkey, Wales, Switzerland.
Okay. Group B: Belgium, Denmark, Finland, and Russia.
Belgium, Denmark, Russia, Finland.
Okay, that's fine. I can't say I disagree with that. Austria, the North Macedonia, and Ukraine.
Netherlands are in that one, yeah?
Yes, Austria, the Dutch, North Macedonia, and Ukraine.
Oh, Dutch, Austria, Ukraine, North Macedonia.
Croatia, Czech Republic, England, and Scotland.
England, Croatia, Scotland, Czech Republic.
You have Reese knocking at your door, wanting to barge your heaven. Poland, Slovakia, Spain, and Sweden.
Just very quickly on that, just on the Croatia thing. Now I've seen Modric in action. He's a shadow of the player he was once. So, the player that once, he'll prove me wrong now, won't he, in about a month's time? But if he plays anything like he was against Chelsea, we've got no fears from Croatia these days. But sorry, what was the next group? Sorry,
Poland, Slovakia, Spain, and Sweden.
Spain, Sweden, Poland, Slovakia.
And in the group of death, France, Germany, Hungary, and Portugal.
This could be Hungary last, obviously. So Hungary fourth, but the other three could be any. I would say just. But what I'm saying is, all three of these teams are among my favourites to win overall. So it could be any way around on this. But because the strength and depth of these three teams is ridiculous, they're probably the three favourites for this competition. In my view, anyway. And obviously England will be in there only because we obviously do have a lot of talent, but also because all these games are being played at home, so at Wembley, a lot of them. So we've got at least a modicum of home advantage, which is always a massive thing in any tournament, as many clubs and many teams over the years many nations have proven over the years. I will say France, Portugal, Germany, Hungary. But again, that one is by far the hardest to determine, apart from the fact that Hungary will come last. Yeah.
Okay, well that ends the podcast for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for all tuning in. I know it's always a bit stop and start, but when you got United game in an hour, we kind of had to push through things. We still got everything covered, and that's the thing. I said it. I think besides the United protest this week and the Mourinho news, nothing's been too massive in the footballing world. So we've covered everything we need. So thank you all very much for joining. Hit the like button, subscribe, comment below, let us know what you think. Me and George will be back next week for more beautiful football talk. So thank you very much, guys. Take it easy, and I'll see you later.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye.